welcome. We'll wait a second for some people to trickle in, and then we will get started. Okay. What if you could invest early in the world's most innovation-dense ecosystem, where advanced technology meets cutting-edge AI, quantum computing, and deep tech innovation? Discover how Israel's unique market conditions have created a compelling entry point into 5 transformative technology pillars, from elite cybersecurity intelligence spinouts to fusion energy breakthroughs reshaping global infrastructure. Investing in Israeli innovation means backing the world's highest concentration of unicorns per capita during a rare valuation opportunity with truly asymmetric return potential. All right, Yev, over to you to dive in.
We have a special topic for this webinar. We host a lot of webinars, over 100 a year, and this one is one that I am particularly excited about. I'm not just saying that. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, but more importantly to the conversation and all of you. This offers one of the most compelling investment opportunities that we see in all of venture and all of markets, period. And we're very excited to share it with all of you today, explain our thesis, elaborate on why we are so excited and why we believe that to be the case. And we'll go through it in a step-by-step basis throughout this webinar. But what you see here, investing in the Israel tech ecosystem, the Silicon Valley of tomorrow, it's much more than a tagline or a clever title here. We truly believe that what we're seeing come out of Israel today is very similar, eerily so, to Silicon Valley, the San Francisco Menlo Park era of the 1960s and early 70s that gave rise to storied firms like Sequoia and Kleiner Perkins and some of the startups that were incubated in those early days of Silicon Valley. We see many parallels to Israel today, hence why we consider it a genuine generational opportunity, potentially a once-in-a-lifetime kind of opportunity. And I know that sounds extreme and hyperbolic, so bear with me for the next 30 minutes, and I'll see if I can convince you to join that notion, to share my belief or not, but I'd love to hear from you in any case. So with that said, let's get some quick disclaimers and housekeeping out of the way. First, we cannot hear or see you. You are off camera, you are on mute, so don't worry and go about your day, do what you need to do. And we are recording this session, so if you miss anything or don't feel you need to take feverish notes as you go along, this will be shared with you afterward in case you want to rewatch certain parts of it. As we get started, I must just pause and remind everyone we are speaking today about Alumni Ventures and our views of the associated investing landscape. This presentation is for informational purposes only and is not an offer to buy or sell securities, which are only made pursuant to the formal offering documents for the fund. First, a few quick words on myself. So I've spent most of my career in entrepreneurship, most recently as a serial innovator at BlackRock. I studied biomedical engineering at Yale University. I came out of Yale and figured, you know, I'll do this startup thing for a year or two at most. And like so many startups, maybe it doesn't go anywhere, maybe it goes to zero, but I'll cut my teeth and kind of learn a thing or two. That year turned into 15 years, and that startup turned into BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager. I was very privileged to have an early seat on that rocket ship as it was taking off. And I wore many hats, as many entrepreneurs do, across stocks, bonds, real estate alternatives, infrastructure, derivatives, private funds. There was almost no asset class I didn't touch. And I was responsible for the largest institutional relationships of the firm, including clients like the Central Bank of Israel, as well as over a dozen other central banks, large sovereign wealth funds across the Middle East and globally, some of the big pension funds, insurance companies, endowments, foundations, you get the idea. So I had a really great bird's eye view of the broader global investment landscape across asset classes. And I realized as I saw the most sophisticated investors globally carve out significant allocation to private funds and specifically to venture, I got very drawn to venture capital specifically for a whole host of reasons. And so I wanted to focus exclusively on venture capital. So 3 years ago, left BlackRock to join Alumni Ventures, where I am an investor and portfolio manager now, responsible for several different funds, including my alma mater, Yale University, called the Blue Ivy Ventures Fund, as well as the Princeton Fund. And as you have probably gathered, and as you will soon see, I'm very passionate about investing in Israel specifically for a whole host of reasons, both professional and personal. I like to say I wear my heart on my sleeve and my kippah on my head. I am devoutly Jewish and proudly and unapologetically pro-Israel. That said, I know that many in the world do not share my view. It would be naive to think otherwise. Of course, Israel, as we've seen over the last 2 years, is an extremely explosive, controversial, polarizing topic. Possibly one of the most hot button issues. People have very strong and wide-ranging views. I just want to make clear that we won't solve peace in the Middle East on this webinar. We are not going to attempt to. I want to stay hyper-focused on the topic that all of you dialed in to hear about, which is the investment side. So this webinar, we won't talk about politics, religion, ideology, which I think is a welcome respite for most. But Israel as a venture powerhouse cannot be ignored. We see enormous opportunities in startup formation, value creation, venture exits coming out of Israel. Many consider it the second largest or most compelling market outside of the United States. So we as global venture capital investors and your conduits into the venture world, which is a role we cherish and deeply appreciate, we can't ignore Israel, and we are leaning in, and we are investing in Israeli startups, in Israeli tech, and we are big believers in the future potential that that ecosystem has to offer. So with that large disclaimer out of the way, let's talk about Israeli tech. And before we do, let's just talk about what we at Alumni Ventures do, because as mentioned, we see our roles exclusively as venture investors. We are not politicians, generals, diplomats. Our job and our commitment and promise to all of you is to try to seek out the best possible startup investment opportunities wherever in the world they may be. What's our track record of doing so globally? So we've been around since 2014. We've raised about 1.5 billion in total capital. We've backed 1,600 portfolio companies. Again, these are globally. About 39 of those are in Israel or have Israeli founders. And we think that there's a significant opportunity that remains in the Israeli tech ecosystem. But we invest globally. And many of these investments have been in the US. Sometimes they are in Egypt or Oman, where we have also invested. And sometimes they will be in Israel. Wherever the best opportunities are, we want to be there. We want to find those opportunities, source them, get access to them, get allocation, and bring them into your portfolios for our investors, for our Alumni Ventures investors. You see some of the accolades here. You know, we were recently named a top 20 firm by CB Insights and number 20 exactly by Time Magazine, for which we are very proud and humbled by these plaudits. And then you see some of the sample portfolio companies we've invested in the bottom right there. Some of these names you'll hopefully recognize. Even if you don't, you can quickly Google them. You can see why they're especially interesting startup investments. We are privileged to get into many of these at early stages, all of these when they're still in private markets before they go public, like companies like Upstart and Rigetti, when a lot of that value creation has already happened, because a lot of that value creation happens at the earliest stages when they're still in private markets. This is just what we call our trophy case. I won't dwell on this slide. This is just to show, hopefully most of you know Alumni Ventures already. You've been with us. Some of you have been longtime loyal investors. Some of you are relatively new to us. All good. These are just a few of the accomplishments that we are especially proud of. And I'll leave it at that. We've been doing this a long time now, and have at least have shown some early hallmarks of accomplishing what we set out to achieve and promise to our investors. Next slide, please, Graham. All right. most of what Alumni Ventures does is through funds. That's probably how you know. So we raise funds, we deploy those funds. Like I mentioned, we have the Yale Fund and the Princeton Fund, which I help to manage. We realized that is an act of faith on the part of our investors, where investors come to us, entrust us with their hard-earned capital, and expect us to create portfolios for them, typically 20 to 25 discrete companies, diversified by stage, sector, and geography, and they expect them to be good deals. We are increasingly offering to our investors the opportunity to take a peek under the hood, or try before you buy, if you will, and take a look at the opportunities we're able to source on a deal-by-deal basis. So instead of saying, trust us, we can get into the best deals, we let you see and judge for yourselves. So we don't have a dedicated Israel fund yet. That's in the plans and the works for some future date. Hopefully, we'll be able to do that at some point and welcome all of you in it, but we don't have one yet. What we do have is a lot of very high quality Israel deal flow, but don't take my word for it. I know you hear that all the time. Come into the syndicate. It's free. There's no commitment. You never have to buy anything. You never have to invest a single dollar. And it takes, what we've heard from our investors, all of 2 minutes to do. So if you're interested, you can literally scan this QR code off to the right on the slide with your phones right now, or when you get the recording, sign up. It'll take it says 3 minutes. So I think it's even less than that. No obligation, no cost. And you'll start seeing some of the deal flow that we talk about, specific to Israel. And judge for yourselves. See how that compares to other deal flow you're seeing from other providers, or that you're sourcing by yourself if you're an angel investor. See how that compares to other deal flow globally. For us, we have to hold ourselves to a very high standard. So first of all deals we get access to, since we are exclusively co-investors, we never lead, they have to be backed by some of the world's top venture capital, the most established venture capital firms in the world. So you see a few names here: Sequoia, Andreessen Horowitz Founders Fund. There are over 1,500 venture capital firms in the world. If you look at the stats in terms of returns, really the top 50 venture firms are the ones that tend to absorb the lion's share of returns. And they do it on a consistent and persistent basis. Year over year, the league tables in venture don't change very much. It tends to be these same names. Those are the names that we like to invest behind. If those are the ones that are garnering the highest returns, we want some of that too for our investors as well. Obviously, we do our independent evaluation and due diligence, but that's what you can expect from us. The deal flow you'll start to see is some of the top startups in the world being led by the top most capable founders and startup CEOs and entrepreneurs, many that have done this before, been there, done that, have exits under their belt, and have strong cap tables, because that's a really important signal for us. So we look at all of that and we make that deal by deal available to you through the Israel syndicate. Some people just window shop, totally fine. You want to take a look at what's under the hood, what's being built in the Israeli R&D labs, which I'll talk about in a moment. Feel free, sign up, scan the QR code, take the 2 or 3 minutes to sign up. It's quick, easy. You'll start seeing deals. Let us know for yourselves what you think. Here are a few examples at the bottom. Some of these companies you might recognize: Anzu, Bionaut, Classic, Quantum Machines. Like I said, there's 39 in total, so it's many we could have chosen.
Hi, Sam again. Let's take a quick second and check out how easy it is to sign up for an Alumni Ventures syndicate. Honestly, it's easier than joining this webinar. So first, what you're going to do is navigate on your browser to av.vc and click Join Us for free. Type your name, email, boom. We're already halfway there. Then after that, you'll use EasyVest to select and confirm your accreditation status. Check a couple boxes that confirm you or your household qualify based off salary level, net worth, or other professional licenses. Promise to keep our materials secret, and then you'll e-sign the NDA with DocuSign. A couple more quick boxes, a digital signature, done. No paperwork, no fax machines, no drama. Identity check, snap, upload, finish your coffee. Most folks are signed up in under 10 minutes. And just like that, you're done. Yes, that's it. You're in, you're official, and you're ready to explore the Alumni Ventures deal flow. Fast, frictionless, and future ready. Okay, let's get back over to the conversation.
This is a slide we created a few weeks back, and thankfully is now stale. Israel has been at war for the last 2 years. We all know that. I don't need to remind anyone on this call of the first bullet point, the undeniable challenges that Israel has endured since its founding, that we all know will continue to be persistent challenges for Israel. But at the moment, and I know it's still very much touch and go, as it always is in the region. At the moment, the region is filled with an overwhelming optimism and a tentative excitement that hasn't been present in over 2 years. So we all hope for the entire region, for all the people of the region, that that can continue and it can lead to a sustained peace. Once again, we know our place and we know our swim lane. We are venture investors, not politicians. We're not here to opine on anything that we know nothing about. What we do know something about is venture investing. That's where we've earned the accolades. That's where we've earned returns for our investors through prior fund investments and syndications. That's where we've seen material exits to some of our prior investments, and happy to elaborate on all those points. And that's exclusively where we're going to stick to our knitting. The third bullet point is really important. Despite the headlines that we've all seen over the last 2 years, and I actually added this point because I think it really accentuates the subtle but critical point I'm going to articulate throughout this session. Partly because of these headlines, Israel today offers one of the most compelling opportunities in all of venture. And it's specifically because the events of the last 2 years, the war, the terrorism, the protests, the anti-Israel sentiment has scared off a lot of would-be investors, a lot of venture tourists, even some established venture players. There's been a capital flight over the last 2 years. Let's be honest about that. As a result, the valuations we are seeing in Israel on a relative basis are some of the most attractive we see anywhere in the world, while the innovation cycles and the startup formation are as attractive as we've seen anywhere. That juxtaposition of those two almost contrasting and paradoxical aspects are what draws us to the Israeli tech ecosystem today and makes us say hyperbolic statements like, is Israel the Silicon Valley of the future? Many smarter people than I have subscribed to that thesis. And like I said, Alumni Ventures is leaning in as well. Here's a little bit of Israel, or the startup nation as it's known, by the numbers. You all very likely know all this, or you wouldn't be joining this webinar. But just to hit the point home real quick. So Israel's #1 in the highest concentration of unicorns per capita. A unicorn, of course, is a company that is worth $1 billion or more. It's what most VCs, if they're honest, they strive for. They strive to invest in a company when they're valued at 10, 20 million, and hopefully become a unicorn and result in significant returns for the fund and for their investors. So everybody wants to back a unicorn before they become a unicorn. And Israel has the highest concentrations of these on a per capita basis. Israel's #2, second only to China in foreign companies listed on the NASDAQ. So think about that for a moment. China with 1.4 billion people and Israel with 10 million people. So #1, of course, on the NASDAQ is the United States. After the United States, it's China, and then it's Israel. So if you have a question, are Israeli companies really able to go public and have any exit success? Keep that point in mind. Israel, the tech sector is 20% of Israel's GDP and over half of its exports. We know how critical the tech sector, or as Israelis say, the high-tech sector is to Israel's economy, to the tax revenue base, to employment, to the export engine. Tech is everything in Israel. Not only that, most Israelis you speak to, they'll say tech is existential. It's a matter of survival for them. And keep that point in mind because I'll come back to it in just a moment. And lastly, Israel is less than 0.1% of the global population, but produced over 100 unicorns, companies worth $1 billion. Most recently, companies worth significantly more than $1 billion. And that's a relatively recent development, which gets us especially excited. So I'll come back to that toward the end when we talk about exits. This is just a table of contents or a roadmap for what we are about to discuss. So I won't go through this piece by piece right now because these are the chapter headings. These are the 5 points for why we believe what we believe about Israeli tech, the venture opportunity that exists there today, and I'll go through it piece by piece and see if you feel similarly. So let's dive into it. Starting with number one on the next slide, the massive R&D investment and government and academic support. Pillar number one, as we call it, the R&D powerhouse. So Israel leads the world, number one, in terms of the GDP invested in terms of R&D as a percentage of GDP. So in Israel's case, 6% of GDP is invested in R&D. A broad catch-all term, it's a bit nebulous, but basically any kind of research and development. That is double the OECD average that we see in most of the developed world. There's also really important government programs that don't get a lot of limelight or fanfare. They're not often publicized, but they're a really critical part in Israel. An example is the Israel Innovation Authority. Government program, it provides grants to companies. It doesn't get a whole lot in return, at least not financially. But what it does is it allows R&D projects to proceed that otherwise would not get funding. And it allows innovations to happen in Israel that would not happen in many parts of the world, just because these are moonshots. These are long shot, deep tech, hard tech, very low probability kind of venture investments. Venture already, as we know, is a bit of a moonshot industry. But for a lot of these Israeli entrepreneurs, they can go to the government, like the Israel Innovation Authority, get funded, at least get them to de-risk early on, get to a point of commercialization to get other VCs and private capital to buy in, and then they're off to the races. Then they can take off and catch flight on their own wings. But that program is really critical to bridging that initial gap. And Israel is really special in how much it has dedicated to programs like this. Why does Israel do it? Why is the government putting its own money on the line to de-risk these startups and not get a lot of financial return? Because for Israel, this is existential. Technology is existential. They know that for Israel to continue to survive in what is arguably, as people say, a rough neighborhood, it has to continue to stay on the vanguard, on the cutting edge of technological innovation. The Weizmann Institute, some of you know it, it's number one across the EMEA region, Europe, Middle East, Africa, for active patents. That's just one example. There are many others like it. The Technion, which is like the MIT of Israel, regularly spins out global scale companies. You probably know many of them already. They started at the Technion and other esteemed universities across Israel, like Tel Aviv University, Ben Gurion University of the Negev, Hebrew University in Jerusalem, many others. There's also a really critical strategic US-Israeli tech alliance that is worth mentioning just for a moment, because this is really critical to how Israeli startups get funded and how they ultimately exit. The first is the Bird Foundation. So this is bi-national kind of investment in research and development. It's 45 years of US-Israeli tech collaboration grants, basically to help fund some of these startups, especially if they can bring benefit to both economies and both nations' national security, Israel and the United States. There's a lot of symbiosis between these two nations, as we know and as we've seen. One clear example is the Iron Dome project, as it's known in Israel. That's the missile defense that protects Israel and Israeli civilians from the thousands of missiles that have rained down on Israel across civilian centers over the past 2 years. It is no exaggeration to say thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of lives have been saved by the Iron Dome. America, as we know, is also on the verge of building their own, what we call the Golden Dome. And a lot of that know-how and experience is going to come from Israel. Why Israel? Is it that we don't have great propulsion scientists or engineers in the United States? Of course we do. But Israel's is the only one in the world, on the entire planet, that has been as battle-tested as it has, especially over the last 2 years. We know this, we've seen it in the headlines, we've lived through it. And that kind of real-world battlefield experience beats a computer simulation every time. Having that kind of data and being able to adjust, recalibrate, get the quick feedback loops, what worked, what didn't, where did we miss a missile, and readjusting those air defenses, super critical. And Israel's, sadly, tragically, the only place on earth that has had that degree of experience in missile defense. But hopefully it can be to the benefit of future generations of Israelis and Americans alike and continue to save thousands of lives. We also have a free trade agreement that's been around since 1985, strong mutual IP, intellectual property protections. We obviously speak the same language. Israel is heavily English-based. Hebrew is the national language, of course, but just about everybody I've met, probably without exception, speaks excellent English, and they know they have to because they want funding from U.S. venture capital firms, and they want to exit to the U.S. market. They want to build and scale in the U.S. So that's not an issue, and there are all kinds of formal frameworks in place. So there's just a lot of tailwinds in favor of this kind of collaboration to continue. Pillar number 2, this is a really important one. Another one that is not unique, but not very common globally. Israel has a mandatory military service requirement. There are a few other nations that do it, not a lot. And that has been a really important part of Israeli culture and national security. The latter point is obvious. The cultural part is that there's an enormous amount of social cohesion that comes from that experience of being in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. The closest thing I can name is in the US, we don't have military mandated conscription, but the college experience, what college you went to, I still have my closest friends from my Yale University experience. Others had it wherever they went to school. That forms lifelong bonds. It does that in spades in a military experience. That's true in peacetime and true exponentially so during wartime, where you've actually served on the front lines together with someone. And it's also where a lot of startup formation and innovation happens. So many of you know the famous Israeli units like Unit 8200 for cyber intelligence, where a lot of cyber startups are born and a lot of the cybersecurity innovation happens. Unit 81 is another one. That's where a lot of deep tech innovations happen. This creates battle-tested technology, as I mentioned before. It also creates battle-tested leaders. People who have gone through that kind of experience simply come out stronger the other side. Sadly, of course, not everybody survives. I know firsthand the experiences of multiple CEOs and founders that lost members of their team, their startup team, on October 7th. Many others have lost members after October 7th, and many that lost their team to conscription, to the call-up of reservists, sometimes a third or even half of a startup team that is just, they got the call, they pick up and they go to the front. And certainly some of these startups will fail, have failed, will not make it. But those that do, imagine the remarkable grit and resilience from those startup founders, those startup employees, from those startups. To survive, to get to this point, that means there's something truly special. It's a real survivorship bias. And those are the investments we go after. Those are the startups and the startup founders and CEOs that we like to back. Venture capitalists, famously, from their comfortable couches, like my own, they like to say, oh, we like to back founders that have a lot of grit and resilience. They've been through hard times and come out the other side. Well, Israel is that in spades. I've had conversations personally where the pitch was interrupted by sirens and the team has to run to the bomb shelter. I know others that have signed term sheets in bomb shelters. So there's a lot of experiences that are, only in Israel kind of experiences. Let's continue on this theme of resilience. So I mentioned some of the social cohesion that's engendered from serving together and the resilience that's formed in some of the startups that are forged coming out of that. We also see a lot of innovation happening as a result of those kinds of experiences. People just coming together that otherwise wouldn't come together under extreme adversity, circumstances they normally wouldn't face. Hopefully no human ever has to face, but sadly they do. And for one reason or another, maybe this makes intuitive sense, maybe it doesn't, there's enormous innovation that happens. It's like a Cambrian moment, a Cambrian explosion of innovation. We've seen it in prior conflicts in Israel. We've seen it even more with the most recent conflict. And a lot of people predicted, oh, well, after October 7th, Israel's toast. Israel's done. The economy is going to be in shambles. How will they ever recover? Will they even survive as a nation? Some people were questioning. They probably don't know, 4,000 years of history. But the tech sector after October 7th has experienced a 40% funding surge, up, not down. The Tel Aviv Stock Exchange surged 50% in the past year, outpacing even the red hot NASDAQ. where some of us might be invested, and we'll talk about that later as well, because that's a topic that's on many people's minds. Are we in a bubble? Are we not? How much further can the NASDAQ go? And where else can I put my money? What are the other opportunities available? The Israeli shekel actually appreciated during the post-war period. Almost any financial metric you look at, if you're more of a fixed income person, you look at credit spreads. If you're an FX markets person, you look at FX rates. Israel has come out stronger, surprisingly, and again, maybe paradoxically, than it was before. But if you look at Israel, at least for recent history, let's say the last 50 years, Israel has obviously had other skirmishes, conflicts, wars, and almost every single time, in fact, I can't name an exception, Israel has come out at the end of that conflict or war even stronger, and has had a period, sometimes lasting years, of a golden age of economic vibrancy. Don't take my word for it. Look it up yourselves. Google it afterward. If you're interested in this topic, email me directly. I'll include my contact details later, and I'm happy to share materials from third parties, not from me, not from Alumni Ventures, not from Israelis, independent third-party sell-side research that documents this and shows it to be the case. If that is to believe, then again, there really hasn't been an exception to that trend. Imagine what we can expect coming out of the last 2 years of hardship and adversity. I'll pause there, let it sink in, but that's part of the reason that we are so excited. Again, risks abound. This is Israel, of course. Israel has always lived amidst risk, and there have always been investments amidst risk. But that's what we do as venture investors. We look for where is the best risk-reward trade-off and the best opportunity for upside with what we hope is manageable risk. I'll come back to that point in a moment later, because that's a really important one about the risk-return trade-off. Israel has been a global VC magnet for many years, but we're starting to see it accelerate, which is notable. So everything I just said on the prior page about Israeli grit and resilience and startup formation and innovation and the golden age now upon us, standing at the precipice of a potentially exciting period in Israel's economic history. More important than my saying it, the really smart money has taken notice. And you see this because the smart money in ventures, the firms that I mentioned earlier, firms like Sequoia that have reopened a local office and relocated a partner to Tel Aviv, firms like Excel raising funds that are Israel focused, firms like Andreessen Horowitz leaning in and starting to make some of their first investments ever in Israel, not just a couple, they're making significant investments. Other firms like Bessemer, Lightspeed, Index, Insight, these are storied names in venture capital. And if you've been around the venture industry, you know them. They're all leaning in to Israel as well. Some of them doing it very quietly for understandable reasons. I wish they would be a little more vocal about it, but I understand. Israel's not the most popular place to hang your shingle, but they are doing it. They're doing it in meaningful ways, relocating personnel, raising funds, deploying capital, and backing Israeli startups and Israeli innovation in a very meaningful way. These are not gestures. This is not symbolic. They're moving sizable amounts of capital, opening offices, taking office space in Israel. So some of the smartest investors in venture are doing this. And whenever we see that kind of thing happen, we always take note. And of course, we understand why. It's not just VCs and the smart money that's moving into Israel. It's also multinational corporations. Over 280 multinational corporations operate 320 R&D centers in Israel and growing. You see some of the logos. Hopefully you recognize a lot of these in the visual at right. This is very notable for a number of reasons. Not only is it great to see multinational corporations of this stature moving into Israel, but it also provides exit opportunities for Israeli startups. VCs always ask, well, it's a great technology, it's an interesting product, you have a good team there, but what are you going to do with it? What's the exit pathway? And Israel, probably more so than in its entire history, has more exit pathways today than it ever has. This is just one of them. The two major pathways in venture, of course, are M&A and IPOs, going public. We'll talk about the latter later, but these are all potential acquirers. Now, why are all these multinationals who can attract some of the top talent in the world, why are they setting up shop in Israel? It's certainly not for the peace and tranquility. It's because they know that Israel has an extraordinarily deep bench of talent and unparalleled R&D commitment, as we talked about in Pillar 1 a few slides before. The significant R&D investments that Israeli universities, Israeli academia, Israeli government, and the Israeli military is making, that's extremely valuable, and all these companies want to be a part of it. They know they can't afford to be left out. In fact, NVIDIA, today, one of the most valuable, if not the most valuable public companies in the world, many attribute its success and recent stock run-up. Obviously, there's AI, megatrend, and the GPUs that NVIDIA makes that are a part of that, but that would not have been possible without NVIDIA's original acquisition of Mellanox in Israel that really gave rise and put NVIDIA on that path, which Jensen Huang himself credits Israel with that, and he's been a champion, and not just in words, he's continuing to invest in Israel as well. So again, some of these companies do it more quietly than others for corporate PR reasons, but they are doing it, and it's real. All right, Pillar 4. This is an inflection point in our narrative. I told you a little bit about my background at BlackRock, and every boardroom and trustee meeting I was in, from smaller family offices to college endowments to the largest pensions and sovereign wealth funds in the world, we always talk about strategic asset allocation, where to put your money. We talk about portfolio construction, and inevitably the term risk-return trade-off comes up. Generally, this is almost a categorical, because it's true almost all the time in all of finance. Since the beginning of time, since the beginning of modern finance at least, to now across all markets and sectors, generally, the more risk you are undertaking, you are asked to bear, you would expect a higher return for that, or why do it? Or if you're willing to accept a lower return for something, you commensurately expect a lower degree of risk. Those two generally go hand in hand. Occasionally, on very rare exceptions throughout modern financial history, and even further back if you study deeper history, you will see temporary, and they're usually temporary, dislocations. Sometimes extreme ones where that relationship breaks down, and that almost always leads to a very compelling investment opportunity if you are able to identify it early enough and seize upon it. We saw it after the dot-com bust of 2000, 2001. There was viewed to be a lot of risk in technology, and few people wanted to invest in the sector, but those that did ultimately made significant returns investing in that post-crash period, because it took courage. Even more so, the 2008 financial crisis, for those of us that lived through it, there was a time in late 2008 that we genuinely felt that the global financial system was going to come tumbling down. Nobody wanted to invest in an environment like that. There was so much uncertainty: who would fail, who would survive, who would require government lifelines. But those that came forward and invested and bore that risk, they made enormous return opportunities later on, because that gave rise to one of the most epic bull runs, kind of 2009 onward. What we're seeing in Israel today is a pricing and valuation environment of a country that's viewed as being very high risk, which is totally understandable on the surface. On the surface, if you know nothing else and you don't take the time to really study and explore Israel, not just the country and the people, but specifically the venture and startup ecosystem, you would absolutely be led to that same conclusion. It's prone to war, it's prone to terrorist attacks, there's a lot of anti-Israel sentiment, protests, it's an unpopular country, all of which on the surface is true. But when you look beneath the surface, and let's take the last 2 years, Israel is really a de-risking story. A de-risking story is something we typically use when we make a startup investment in venture. We recently did one in a cancer therapeutic. And we said, oh, you've done a lot of de-risking. You've actually tested, you've done clinical trials, you've worked on small mammals, large mammals. Next, you're going into monkeys and eventually humans. So you've done a lot of de-risking. That makes it ready for venture investment. We are ready to come in and invest now that it's been de-risked. I talked about the Israeli Innovation Authority, part of the government earlier, that does a lot of that de-risking to make those startups more attractive to venture investors. Well, Israel as a nation, has been de-risking for about 2 years. What do I mean by this? And I know the military aspect might be unpopular with some, and again, we're not military strategists, so we're not opining on that. But from an investment standpoint, seeing an environment today where Hamas has largely been broken apart in Gaza, Hezbollah in the north and Lebanon has been largely defanged, and in the past, when it would rain down missiles on Israel, jeopardizing some of our startup investments, suddenly quieter than they've been in years. We saw the 12-day war with Iran earlier this year, where Israel showed the war who really controls the skies over Tehran. The fall of Assad in Syria, the potential expansion of the Abraham Accords across a far larger swath of the Middle East than anyone, even the greatest optimists, myself included, ever dreamt of. All of this is tenuous, of course. It can change. And it's hard to remain optimistic and continue to dream about a peaceful Middle East. But compared to Israel pre-October 7th, even Israel's biggest foes have to admit it's a dramatically altered landscape. That de-risking, coupled with a low valuation environment, is one of the greatest dislocations we've seen, at least I'll speak for myself, that I've seen in recent financial history. And that contrast, that paradox, is what gets us especially excited. I don't think I'd be sitting here with the same ebullience if Israel had a bunch of overvalued AI startups, as we're seeing coming out of Silicon Valley and other AI centers globally. I'd probably still champion Israeli tech because that's what I truly believe in and care deeply about. But I wouldn't be as excited. I couldn't in good conscience use some of the hyperbolic language that I use because, yeah, you know, Israel has some great innovation and it has the reservists and it has the de-risking story and it has the social cohesion and the startup founders and all that, but it's so expensive, which is what we heard immediately before October 7th, 2023. Everyone lamented, oh, Israel's just so expensive, which was true. Well, if you liked Israel then, you probably like it a whole lot more now, or you should, at a significantly reduced valuation. And that's why we quote Warren Buffett in this last bullet point at the bottom, be greedy when others are fearful. People are still fearful or hateful or misinformed, whatever it may be. We're just starting to see the smart money lead the way into Israel, as I mentioned, with those VCs and the multinationals, but the valuations haven't fully rebounded yet. So there is an opportunity, but yes, it's fleeting. The funding momentum. So Israeli tech companies have raised about 10 billion last year, which is a notable raise for an economy and ecosystem that's, you know, relatively small given Israel's size and population. It's a 25% year-over-year increase, outpacing US, Europe, and Asia. So clearly, Yev Gelfand is not the only one who's caught on to this. Others have noticed. But the valuations still remain relatively depressed, because they are coming back. And I have no crystal ball. I can't predict how soon we'll be back to pre-October 7th lamenting, oh, Israel is so expensive again. But for now, as of the airing of this webinar, there is a rare, once in a generation, and I really mean that language, that's not hyperbole or clever diction. It's what we feel is a once in a generation opportunity, but it is fleeting. And I'm not trying to create false urgency or get you to do something you wouldn't otherwise do. Again, there's no real cost here to signing up for the syndicate and seeing the deals and innovations for yourself. Be your own judge. Take a look. Call me out if I'm wrong. But it's not going to last forever, just given the recent trend lines. We are almost done, so thank you for bearing with us. The last part of the venture story, of course, everything I talked about to date and the valuations, the depressed valuations, that's only one part of the venture math. The other half is the exits, and that's critical. And historically, that's been Israel's Achilles heel, because Israel did see some exits in the past, but they used to be small size, modest dollar amounts, enough for an Israel local success story, but not really enough to whet the appetites of Western venture capitalists. I say that used to be the case because it is the case no longer. What we're seeing now is an acceleration of exit activity. And when I say exit, I mean you've made your investment in the startup. At some point, you got to get your money back. How do you get your money back? You get it through an exit, where an Israeli startup gets bought out by a larger incumbent, typically Western large multinational, or the Israeli company goes public. Can be on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, but more typically it's the NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, London Stock Exchange. ideally it's a large, established, deep Western capital markets exchange. And so we are seeing accelerating exits, and even more importantly, what gets us even more excited, the size of these exits have finally gotten to a scale where they're getting interest from some of the largest VCs in the world. As we saw, why else would they relocate their offices and personnel to Israel? And we're also seeing sizes that in some cases even rival Western exits. So a few examples. We saw earlier that Wiz, the cybersecurity startup acquired by Google for $32 billion. CyberArk acquired by Palo Alto Networks for $27 billion. eToro went public on the NASDAQ at a valuation of $5 billion. Via, another Israeli startup in the mobility and transportation sector, $4 billion. The fact that we're using billions with a B now is already a marked change. In the past, you talk about exits as a $50 million exit, 100, maybe $500 million exit was a big exit. That was notable. These days, we're talking about a completely different ball game. And that's what gets all of the global money so excited about teeny tiny Israel. So if your question was, that's all great, Yev, but will I ever get my money back? Is there any exit activity in Israel? Hopefully this helps shed a little bit of light on that. This talks about the U.S. acquisition pipeline. I already mentioned this point that hundreds of Israeli startups have been acquired by U.S. companies over the years. We expect that trend to continue. It's not a promise or a guarantee, but the early trend lines are showing an acceleration of that trend. The acquired teams become R&D centers for the parent companies, as we saw, because we saw how many R&D centers are being opened in Israel. That's a great way to establish a foothold in Israel, is through acquisition. Many Western large multinationals do exactly that. And it allows a return of capital to investors while strengthening the cross-border strategic ties that I mentioned on the previous page, the importance of those cross-border US, American, in that case, strategic ties between those two stalwart allies. This is a quote from Howard Marks, the legendary investor from Oak Tree Capital, and he always liked to say, the greatest opportunities come when others are panicking. That's when as Howard Marks, Howard Marks, always take note. When there's a lot of panic in the market, I take a look. Are they panicking for good reason, or is there some kind of dislocation? I'll let you be the judge. I've made my point and my thesis at this point. I've articulated the 5 pillars. Maybe I've convinced you, maybe I haven't. I certainly believe it, and I'm investing with our own Alumni Ventures capital, that of our investors, and myself personally. I'm investing myself, my own personal and family office behind this trend as well. It's something I very deeply believe. Even if you strip away, which I heartily try to do, my personal passion and bias, objectively speaking, the opportunity is there. There are many surface reasons not to invest in Israel, but hopefully I've dispelled at least a few of those, shared the Israel de-risking story with you, and shared why the fundamentals point to a period, and I think we are just on the threshold of this, a period of potentially explosive and sustained growth in Israel's history. So thank you for bearing with us. I will stick around. I promised that I would share my contact information, Graham. That might be on the next slide. I'll just hear the timing imperative. I've already beaten this horse. The last bullet is the only one you really need to note. Opportunity favors the bold. The time to act is now. I hope it doesn't come across as false urgency. I'm not that kind of guy. I usually don't say that, but in this case, I really do believe it. I think it's an ephemeral opportunity. I don't know how long it will last. Maybe it'll be a while, but maybe not. But the quality of the deal flow we're seeing now, we are not losing any time. We're seizing upon it. And if you take away nothing else, I strongly encourage you to at least take a look yourselves. Doesn't have to be through me. Doesn't have to be through the AV Israel Investment Syndicate. But take some of these theses and tenets that I've articulated, our 5 pillars. Take them away, challenge them, question them, research them for yourselves, see what you think. And if you ultimately come to the same conclusion as us, then here's how you can reach me. There's my contact information at bottom, along with my mugshot, my email address. It is an open invitation. Anyone who would like to email me, I check every email, I answer every email. I would love to hear from you, especially if you disagree. If you don't subscribe to my notion or you want to challenge any of my points, I welcome that. I love to hear diverging points of view. It's one of the greatest thrills of being in ventures that you constantly hear diverging opinions. So again, I ask that we please keep it apolitical. My focus is on venture investing, but if you have any technological viewpoints or investment perspectives, I would love to hear from you. Or if you have questions, I would love to discuss it, answer any and all questions that I'm able to. If you prefer by phone or WhatsApp, there's my phone number. You can call me up. It's my direct line. We can talk. Feel free to text me or WhatsApp. I know Israel is huge on WhatsApp. As I learned early on, my Israeli friends immediately told me, yeah, if you don't get on WhatsApp, you're not an Israeli venture. So I quickly took that lesson to heart. So feel free, please. I welcome your outreach. And again, this is the same QR code on the right side of the page as before. Feel free to scan it. It'll take you to the Israel Syndicate page. It's a 2 to 3 minute sign up, no strings attached, no obligations, no cost. If you want to just window shop, perfectly fine. But I sincerely hope you'll join us. I'd love it if you joined our Israel Syndicate so you can see what's happening for yourselves in Israel and hopefully participate, even if not financially through investment. If you there are ways that you can be part of the community, maybe even be helpful to some of these startups, or you're interested in speaking with some of the startups, maybe being an advisor, a strategic advisor, an independent board member, maybe even working. Sometimes we place people into full-time roles at some of the startups we invest in. If you're interested in that, happy to have that conversation as well. There's lots of opportunity if you join our syndicate, and we welcome you as a part of the community. Of course, I have to close with a thank you. A toda rabba. Thank you for being with us, for your time. There are many other ways you could have spent your time. You shared it with us, and I can only presume it's because there is at least some modicum of interest in Israel. I certainly have more than my fair share. So thank you everyone for your time, for being with us. Please reach out. I welcome your questions and inquiries and challenges, and hopefully you'll join the syndicate as we grow it and we can invest in Israel, the startup nation, together. Thank you and all the best.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. It's great. When you invest in Israel, you're not just backing startups. You're backing resilience, precision, and a global legacy of breakthrough innovation. Thank you for joining us, and if you're ready to explore high-impact opportunities from the heart of one of the world's most advanced innovative ecosystems, scan the QR code or visit av.vc to get started. And as always, we will see you next time.